Snowhead Temple, the second temple dungeon in the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. An icy, chilly place that haunts the area called the Snowhead region. The great hero Darmani III, that was considered the greatest warrior of his tribe, suffered a terrible accident when he decided to investigate Snowhead Temple to find out what was going on and why the winter fell over his people so early. You see, the winter that hit the Gorons is an artificial curse that has been placed upon them, and spring, the season that was supposed to happen around this time, was blocked by the curse. You should see Snowhead like a large mountain with snow on top of it, with the rest of the area being unaffected by snow. As this video is about the temple and not the entire story of the area itself, as there's lots of stuff happening here, like a Goron stuck on a platform that needs food, which will give you the Don Gero mask, or Don Gero mask depending how you pronounce it, in return for helping him, or the Goron race track that you can play in after beating the dungeon. I want to discuss the temple itself and its surroundings. One thing to mention real quick though, I find it interesting how the Gilded Sword is the strongest sword in the game, and that it is shaped the same as the amazing Girahim from Skyward Sword. Maybe this idea was the inspiration for Girahim being a sword in Skyward Sword later on. The temple structure has the shape of the enemy called Freezard, a common ice enemy in the series that happens to breathe ice. Together with the big Goron breathing the ice in the front of the temple, it is implied that the temple is resembling the Freezard. What is interesting about this temple is that it is the mixture between ice, lava, and racetracks, as you need to become Darmani himself in order to speed roll over the platforms to get from point A to point B. As in the story, Link heals the soul of Darmani and in turn is able to transform himself into the Goron Darmani by wearing the Goron mask. The temple seems to have been built by all sorts of materials like rock, dirt, ice, snow, and in some rooms we can even find lava and brickstone. Other parts of the rooms seem to have iron or steel floors, which is strange considering the temple having zero temperatures to do with machines. The layout of the temple is based on the 4 floors plan, and the basement, which to me was always a little confusing but not hard to deal with. What I also found out when I did some research on the temple are these green reddish gems on some of the platforms, like the one found in the mini-boss room. As the Goron race are responsible for all the gems and minerals in Hyrule, in Termina they might have done the same thing before Snowhead even existed. It is never explained why Snowhead exists, other than just being a puzzle-based story-driven dungeon designed for a video game. Lore-wise, I would like to go into more detail. The Gorons used to worship and live in the Snowhead Temple, long before they ever shifted to the Goron village. When the Gorons built the temple, they harvested their stones and other materials from the basement of the temple, which was nothing more but caves at first, which is why we find lava and rocks there with a bunch of platforms. As the Gorons built further up, completing the foundation of the temple, they found out that it wasn't enough for the temple to keep standing upwards like it is now, so they enforced the sides of the temple with a thicker layer of snow and ice. By building supports of different materials like iron and wood, the structure managed to keep itself standing tall, but this wasn't enough. This is why we find rooms of layered clay brick stones and forged steel on top of the structure, as the building went higher up to the sky, and as the Gorons are the best engineers of Hyrule and Termina in terms of machinery mixing with fire, it would make sense why we see this in the temple. And throughout the ages, the structure was finally completed, looking like a straight tower instead of the bone-chilling freezed structure that it is now. After completing the temple, the Gorons continued to build more structures and machinery, causing the road to be built that we see today, going all the way from Snowhead to the mountain village, connecting the entire realm to Clocktown and the 3 other directional empires. Now that I spoke about the building of the temple itself, and why it was a normal structure like we can see a Goron village, we have to start talking about the boss of the temple, Goht. The funny part of this boss is that it resembles a mountain goat, and so his name is a very funny reference to it. However, it is never stated why the boss looks like a machine going haywire. As Goht is the one responsible for the curse that has led upon Snowhead Temple, it was never really explained why it's a machine. As the game explains it, the 4 giants are being protected within the masks of the bosses of the temples, and they are the ones responsible for the curses that each temple has, but I would like to change this round. In the manga of Majora's Mask, it's also not explained what Goht is, except just being another monster guarding another giant. Nowhere it is stated why Goht is a machine, so I will try my best to make a connection here. Majora's Mask only had 1 year to be a fully functioning game, which would explain why there is barely any background to this monster. But to me, it was the Gorons who created the machine in the first place, by making it ram into walls of different areas that they wanted to mine in. By having the machine work like a steam engine, as the sounds you can hear in the battle created by Goht sounds like a train passing by. Goht would eventually ram against indestructible walls, which would collapse, and by acting like dynamite or a bomb, the areas of the caves would loosen up the materials, which would make it easier for the Gorons to mine them. Over time, the Gorons left the sacred temple alone simply because of the overpopulation of their people, creating the village and places we see today. In real life, people build towns and cities very close by to waters, but Gorons don't need this. They need stones and hard rock to eat and survive. As their civilization grew more, they eventually only used the village as their own base, and the shrine that is close by to it, as their way of worshipping the giants, their own race, and the strength of their people. And by doing so, Snowhead Temple, the once proud temple that was once created by the Gorons, for the Gorons, and by the protection of the Gorons, fell into disarray. The Gorons didn't forget about the temple itself though, as they used it in the past to protect themselves against the cold regions of the Snowhead region, but after settling down into the village, it wasn't necessary to use it anymore, so they left it alone, down in the cold mountain region of Snowhead. And by doing so, the temple overshadowed by sadness of abandonment, missing the warmth of its people, slowly transforming into an image of a freezer with monsters living in it. And by leaving it alone, the Gorons created their own demise by having a released ancient evil taking it over and using their own creations against them. And that is when Link arrived. Thank you all for watching, and I hope I'll see you guys in the next video.